bodies of 10 Navy SEAL operatives were washed ashore on Alcatraz Island. A CIA agent looking through binoculars discovered that the bulletproof vests of these were full of fragments from M67 grenades. This is standard equipment. According to Article 37 in the Marine Corps Jungle Warfare Manual, everyone immediately felt a chill down their spine. This was not an operation to encircle and destroy the enemy, but a pursuit between former comrades. Why were two elite units from the most elite ranks of the U.S. forces slaughtering each other? The story begins a few days earlier. Homer is a major general in the Marine Corps. He had been dispatched to many countries to carry out military missions, renowned for numerous military achievements that were honored. During a secret mission abroad, 83 Marines sacrificed their lives for the country. But due to the secretive nature of the military mission, they did not receive any honors, not even an official military funeral. Their families also did not receive any compensation. General Homer could no longer endure the nation's indifference. When his wife was alive, he still had responsibilities towards the family. Now, with his wife gone, he no longer has any ties. This war hero wants to become a messenger seeking justice. He wants to reclaim fairness for the 83 subordinates who sacrificed their lives. That night, a well-equipped armed group secretly infiltrated the military arsenal. They used specially made ropes to accurately secure them to the watchtower at the same time. General Homer's convoy boldly entered the base under the guise of a security inspection. As soon as the wheels crossed the threshold of the base, the attackers lurking in the shadows outside like moon predators swiftly shattered the glass doors. Immediately, they subdued the guards who were on alert on the tower. The operation was executed swiftly and silently. The patrolling soldiers outside, unaware of the danger, quietly failed. In this manner, his team, without firing a single bullet, successfully obtained a pass to the armory. Their infiltration into the armory was also meticulously planned. Two team members dressed in guard uniforms boldly walked in front, while the rest of the team hid behind them. As soon as they entered the armory, everyone relied on their sharp battlefield instincts to quickly secure key positions. As soon as the security personnel in the armory poked their heads out, the two leading soldiers exchanged glances and immediately took action. Using tranquilizer guns, they continuously took down the security personnel. Then, under everyone's protection, Homer went straight to the deepest part of the armory. The target they were willing to achieve at any cost was the 16 nerve gas bombs with terrifying destructive power. The power of this weapon surpasses imagination. Just a spoonful of the toxin dispersed in the air can annihilate all living creatures within the radius of 10 buildings. Although the members were extremely careful when moving, an accident suddenly occurred. A specially crafted crystal orb containing the toxin suddenly shattered. The toxin immediately spilled out. One member couldn't avoid it in time, and within seconds, his entire body quickly became ulcerated and necrotic, leading to a death beyond death. But this was just the beginning of their grand plan. It is said that Homer and his subordinates disguised themselves as tourists to infiltrate the tour group visiting Alcatraz Island. This was once considered the most secure prison in the United States, and it has now become a tourist attraction. From its establishment until its closure in 1963, no prisoner ever survived an escape from this isolated island. Curious tourists follow the guide and explore the cells to experience the unique prison life, but they are completely unaware that they are about to walk into a deadly trap. In an instant, the situation suddenly changed, and all 81 tourists were unexpectedly captured by General Homer and his accomplices, completely unprepared. They were entirely taken hostage. Shortly after, the remaining subordinates of Homer arrived in 2 helicopters. Along with them were 15 missiles and numerous advanced pieces of equipment. Under Homer's command, everyone quickly took action. Various types of equipment were deployed in a short time. They loaded 3 toxic gas bombs into position, then locked the attack coordinates onto downtown San Francisco. To ensure everything went smooth, they also went to vulnerable spots on the island to install the latest vibration detection equipment. After all, what they were doing was nothing short of treason, and if caught, they would inevitably face execution. Therefore, they had to be extremely careful, and the true purpose of all this was about to be revealed. It turned out that Homer and his accomplices wanted to use the hostages and the launch of missiles containing toxic gas as leverage. with the aim of seeking justice for the 83 comrades who had died in the mission. Homer solemnly told his subordinates, after succeeding, each person will receive a huge reward of $1 million. The price to pay is that they will never be able to return to their homeland. But even so, the subordinates remained steadfast in their choice to follow him. All preparations were complete. Homer called FBI Director Womack, coldly informing him that 81 hostages were in their hands. 15 VX missiles are aimed at the San Francisco Bay Area. Upon hearing this, Womack felt a chill in his heart. He immediately ordered his secretary to cancel all schedules and rushed to the Pentagon to verify. According to the document, Homer had served in the military for 30 years, participating in nearly all of the U.S. foreign wars. During the same period, was awarded the highest honor of the U.S. military, the Medal of Honor. A seasoned veteran like that is certainly an extremely formidable opponent, just as the senior officials were at believing there was no other way. Homer called to demand that within 40 hours, the military must transfer $100 million from the Pentagon's secret arms trade to an overseas account specified as compensation for the 83 soldiers who had died. In addition, he was well aware of the countermeasures the military might take. If the U.S. government refused to pay or tried any trick, he would not hesitate to launch the toxic gas missile. The U.S. government has always adhered to the principle of never negotiating with terrorists. The FBI urgently dispatched their top biochemical weapons expert, Woodpeck. They also formed a task force, preparing for a strong assault on Alcatraz Island. However, choosing to land by helicopter was too easily detectable, and if Homer's men discovered them, it could very likely provoke him into launching the missiles in a frenzy. After much consideration, the only feasible way was to secretly infiltrate Alcatraz Island beneath the prison, then attack from behind. However, Alcatraz Island had undergone numerous renovations, and the underground tunnels were as intricate as a maze. The original construction blueprints were now completely unusable. They urgently needed a tunnel expert to assist them. The former prison director had passed away in 1979. Other prison officials also expressed their helplessness. Just as everyone was worried about what to do, the CIA director suddenly thought of someone. This person was a former intelligence officer of the British Royal Task Force, well-versed in many American secrets over the past half-century. These secrets could shock the world, including many White House scandals, and even the truth about the Kennedy assassination. To prevent these secrets from being disclosed, the CIA detained him for 30 years. But due to an urgent situation, they were forced to release him from prison. Perhaps only he can help in this critical situation. The CIA agent approached him, stating that there was a serious hostage crisis on Alcatraz Island. They hoped Mason could provide the secret route from the past, and promised Mason that once the hostages were successfully rescued, the U.S. government would pardon his father. Upon hearing this, Mason indicated that he needed time to consider the conditions. During that time, he wanted to stay in a suite at the Fairmont Hotel. Hearing this, the representative immediately got angry, saying why he was being so troublesome. Then he firmly stated that either he helps rescue the hostages or he obediently returns to prison to await death. In fact, this tactic by the representative was intentional. The purpose was to give Mason the opportunity to consider carefully. But time was tight, and they didn't have much time left. The FBI director felt helpless and decided to send Woodpeck to negotiate with Mason. After all, the two would be teammates, soon to undertake a dangerous mission together on Alcatraz Island. Although Woodpeck was merely a chemical weapons expert, at this point, they had no choice but to make do with what they had. Woodpeck, feeling anxious, stepped into the interrogation room. To show sincerity, he signaled the guard to remove Mason's handcuffs and presented the amnesty issued by the Minister of Justice for Mason to see. He said that as long as the mission was completed successfully, Mason would be set free. However, Mason maintained his indifferent attitude. Yet Woodpeck's awkwardness and lack of negotiation experience unexpectedly gained Mason's trust. Woodpeck agreed to all of Mason's demands, including the request for a suite at the Fairmont Hotel, which was also accepted. He even suggested that he shave. And so Mason was taken to the Fairmont Hotel. After that, the director ordered the hotel to be locked down and gave Woodpeck a maximum of 2 hours. Then he took the pardon order and tore it to pieces because they never intended to release Mason. The reason is very simple. This guy knows too many secrets. He's a ticking time bomb, no less dangerous than the current crisis. At this moment, Mason is comfortably taking a shower, humming a random tune. Then he swiftly pulled out a cord from the shower curtain After that, he picked up the phone without hesitation and ordered a table full of delicacies for the special agents. At the same time, Tony, a professional barber, was scheduled to come to the office. The agents nearby, with tense expressions, carefully checked Tony's personal belongings. Even scissors and razors were considered dangerous items. Tony was bewildered, wondering how he could cut hair without these tools. Then Tony went out to the balcony to cut Mason's hair, while Mason appeared to be sitting still for the haircut. But in reality, his hands had already begun to secretly maneuver. His face showed no expression as he skillfully slipped the hidden string onto his wrist. Meanwhile, the agents were engrossed in the free seafood feast, completely unaware that Mason had planned a daring escape. After the haircut, Mason transformed completely from a shabby old man into a dashing and charming gentleman. He confidently shook hands with Director Womack, seemingly accepting the agreement. But the very next moment, he immediately turned against them. Seeing this, Woodpeck quickly drew his gun but he was merely a biochemistry expert. Mason knew well that Woodpeck wouldn't dare to fire, as he still held significant value. So Mason seized the opportunity to loop the rope and the bait. Taking advantage of Woodpeck being distracted by rescuing someone, he slipped away swiftly like a ghost. Mason quickly took the elevator down to the lower floor of the hotel, hijacked a Hummer parked at the entrance, and sped away from the hotel at full throttle. After Mason successfully escaped, a breath-holding chase officially began. Woodpeck was not to be outdone. He hijacked a Ferrari and immediately joined the pursuit of Mason. In the blink of an eye, the narrow, old streets of San Francisco turned into a high-speed racetrack. On both sides, Woodpeck's driving skills were also formidable. After he executed a successful scorpion tail drift, avoiding obstacles, he caught up right behind Mason's car. However, accidents always happen unexpectedly. To avoid a pedestrian who suddenly appeared, Mason's Hummer unexpectedly crashed into a streetcar by the roadside. The streetcar, upon impact, immediately lost control. Who was driving close by, managed to jump out of the sports car he had just borrowed in time, thus luckily avoiding being crushed by the streetcar. After that, Woodpeck continued by borrowing an off-road motorcycle. This behavior also made people wonder if it was considered theft. But by this time, Mason had disappeared without a trace. Woodpecker thought that Mason's sudden escape must have a reason, possibly due to some concern. So he immediately called his colleagues for help to investigate Mason's family records, quickly discovering that he had a daughter in San Francisco. Woodpecker followed the address to the hideout of Mason's daughter. After some surveillance, he indeed discovered Mason's whereabouts outside a church a mile away. Just as Woodpeck guessed, after many years in prison, Mason only wanted to see his daughter again. After many years apart, the distance between father and daughter was very deep. The daughter didn't even dare to meet her father alone, so she brought her best friend along. Woodpeck informed Womack to come and assist, then hit the eavesdrop on Mason's conversation with his daughter. The last time Mason saw a picture of his daughter, she was just 10 years old. In his daughter's eyes, he was a wanted criminal. Mason had no time to explain. In the United States, he didn't even have a name. After being captured, the CIA erased all information about him. Over the years, he had practiced countless times what he should say when meeting his daughter. But when they actually met, it became awkward before he could say much. A series of police cars arrived with sirens blaring. Surrounding the scene, his daughter thought he had escaped from prison again and was extremely disappointed in him. Also didn't expect this fugitive to have such a gentle demeanor. Before his colleagues could make the arrest, he hurriedly stepped in to meet him, telling Mason's daughter that her father was helping the FBI resolve a dangerous crisis. This was to help him maintain some dignity in front of his daughter. And this also completely changed Mason's perspective. After saying goodbye to his daughter, Mason revealed to everyone that the prison's water tank was connected to the sewage treatment system. Years ago, he successfully escaped through the sewage pipe. It's just that 30 years have passed, and he no longer remembers the exact escape route. Mason said that only by going there in person could the route be determined. Director Hamer, upon hearing this, immediately suspected that Mason was plotting another escape and demanded that he draw a map of the route. However, while Mason had the patience to slowly recall, the government did not have the time to wait for that. The 40-hour deadline set by Homer was approaching, and no one knew what crazy thing he might do when the time ran out. Meanwhile, Mason was the only hope to rescue the hostages. Everyone had no other choice but to take him along. At the same time, Woodpecker used satellite thermal imaging to pinpoint the exact location of the missiles. He planned to tell the method of disarming the missiles, to the Special Forces team leader, but due to orders from above, considering the city's fate in his hands, he changed his mind. He decided to go along now. There were only 15 hours left. Mason and Woodpit's Special Forces team quickly assembled. The target was clearly directed towards Alcatraz Island. Everyone was about to face an operation full of unpredictable challenges. This operation was led by Captain Anderson of the SEAL team. Since Mason was unfamiliar with the terrain, he took on the role of guide. He was responsible for leading the team through a secret entrance. To infiltrate inside, Woodpeck needed to dismantle all the missiles containing toxic gas on the island, which was the key to resolving the crisis. After all the plans were arranged, the Special Forces team quickly boarded the transport plane. Throughout the flight, 2 armed helicopters closely escorted them. They flew at a low height, heading towards the target sea area. Upon reaching the designated location, the beacon for the transport plane lit up. Everyone carrying underwater propulsion devices jumped into the sea. One by one, under Mason's precise guidance, the Special Forces team quickly found the entrance to the secret tunnel leading to Alcatraz Island. In just a few minutes, the 10-member Special Forces team successfully passed through the water and entered the prison's boiler room. However, when the team leader looked around, he found no decent exit and couldn't help but feel worried. He loudly questioned Mason about what was happening. At this moment, Mason appeared calm, casually squatting next to the boiler. While everyone was full of doubt, Mason suddenly leaned over and rolled into the blazing boiler. Everyone thought Mason had abandoned them to escape on his own. Unexpectedly, not long after, Mason opened a hidden door from inside. After that, the Special Task Force smoothly and swiftly advanced deep into the intricate network of underground pipes. After enduring many hardships, the team finally reached the area right below the bathroom. Just as they were about to extend the surveillance camera out of the manhole, the detection device installed at the entrance immediately alerted the rebels to the movement. In the blink of an eye, the fully armed rebels spread out everywhere and quickly completed the defensive on setup. The second floor of the bathroom, the Special Task Force was completely unaware of the game. The ground had been tightly surrounded by the rebels, and a faint howl from above looked down on everyone, firmly demanding the Special Task Force to surrender. Facing the enemy's tightened as so Anderson was forced to step forward and attempt to negotiate with Hamer. He expressed sympathy for what Hamer had endured, but as a soldier himself, he could not order a surrender. Just as both sides were in a standoff, a brick fell from the upper floor, breaking the silence. In the blink of an eye, both sides began to open fire, starting a battle that should never have happened. Cease fire! Cease fire! But it was too late. The rebels had the advantage, attacking from above in a moment. Not a single member of the Special Forces team survived. From this moment, the rebels no longer deserved to be called soldiers. They had turned into bloodthirsty mercenaries, ready to massacre their compatriots just for money. Fortunately, Mason and Woodpecker were at the back of the formation, so the rebels did not detect them. The raid was declared a complete failure. Mason hurriedly took the radio and weapons from the dead Special Forces soldier, clearly intending to retreat alone. Woodpith, aware of the urgent situation, quickly moved forward to stop him. He told Mason the truth, that the rebels had aimed containing toxic gas at San Francisco. If they left now, countless innocent people, including Mason's daughter, would die unjustly under the toxic gas. Hearing this, Mason was shaken to the core. After considering for a moment, he had no other choice but to agree to continue fighting alongside Woodpeck. On the other side, the rebels had entered the pipeline to check for any survivors, but discovered that the weapons in the hands of the deceased were gone. Humble upon hearing this, immediately concluded that there were still survivors. He immediately ordered his subordinates to enter the tunnel and conduct a comprehensive search. Not long after, the whereabouts of Mason and Woodpeck were discovered by the rebels. Upon discovering the target, the rebels immediately threw a powerful grenade into the pipeline, where the two were hiding. A loud explosion followed by a strong immediately knocked the two to the ground. But it didn't stop there immediately after. Another extremely powerful incendiary bomb was thrown down. Fierce flames, accompanied by scorching heat, rushed towards the two. Without much time to think, the two hurriedly jumped into the water to evade. After escaping death, the two continued along the underground pipeline, quietly reaching the outside of the warhead room. A guard was stunned by the sudden appearance of the two. He frantically reached out, but Mason, quick-eyed and swift-handed, thrust a dagger precisely into his throat. The guard next to him immediately raised his gun to retaliate. Both sides, positioned on either side of the missile, immediately engaged in a fierce gunfight. After dealing with the enemy, the two finally got a clear view of the entire warhead room on Alcatraz Island was gloomy and cold. 12 warheads were neatly arranged. Woodpith began the task of dismantling the toxic gas bomb. The extremely potent poison was sealed within exquisite crystal spheres, but was extremely unstable. Even a slight impact would shatter the sphere. The toxic gas would turn the surrounding area into a hell. Just 60 short seconds, Woodpecker was highly focused, his hands trembling slightly. The two people, although not communicating with each other, coordinated extremely well. After some effort, Woodpecker successfully extracted the guidance chip from a missile. He breathed a sigh of relief and said to Mason, "Removing this means that even if the missile is launched, it will only fly 500 feet before falling into the sea. Which is no problem at all." However, the brief calm was also shattered. At this moment, the walkie-talkie on the guard's hip suddenly went off, transmitting an order to report the checkpoint on the other side. Hummer, after waiting for a response that never came, immediately realized something was wrong and led his subordinates at full speed towards the warhead room. In this critical moment, Woodpecker had just finished removing the chip from the last missile. In the warhead room, as soon as the rebels opened fire, he swiftly dashed towards the entrance of the underground mine before Woodpecker could catch his breath. 3 rebels were already chasing after him like a pack of wolves. The intricate network of tunnels beneath Alcatraz Island was like a fish in water for Mason. He took out the fuel he carried and sprayed it forcefully at the leading rebel. Taking advantage of the moment when the rebel aimed his gun at Woodpecker, Mason quickly struck a waterproof match, igniting the fuse that had been set up at the rebel's feet. In the blink of an eye, the flames erupted, engulfing the rebel in a sea of fire. Seeing from this, the enemy immediately threw a grenade. The grenade had a 5-second delay. Bum! And Woodpith quickly picked it up and threw it back. Mason used a hook to hang upside down and launched a surprise attack, taking down another rebel, but they faced the last one. A young Special Forces soldier with strong close combat skills, Mason, who is nearly 70 years old, was at a disadvantage in this critical moment. Goodspeed quickly picked up a gun from the ground and fired several shots, taking down the last soldier. This was the first time Goodspeed had killed someone. With the nation's safety at stake, he had no other choice at this moment. Homer was holding a hostage and shouting loudly, threatening the two to hand over the missile control. Every 3 minutes, he would kill a hostage. Goodspeed was shaken inside, and he began to hesitate. Seeing this, Mason quickly stepped forward, knocked the control out of Goodspeed's hand, and then instructed him to continue searching for and dismantling the remaining 3 toxic gas bombs. Then, to buy time for Goodspeed, he did not hesitate to stand up and actively confront the rebels. Mason expressed his understanding of Homer's pain from being betrayed by the government. However, massacring millions of civilians cannot console the souls of the soldiers who sacrificed their lives. Moreover, this is not a war at all, but an act of blatant terrorism. On the other side, Goodspeed also found a missile, but they still underestimated Homer. Just as Goodspeed finished removing the guidance chip from a missile, 2 rebels jumped down from above. Goodspeed couldn't dodge in time and was kicked to the ground. Although he quickly destroyed the removed chip, he was still chased and subdued by the rebels. A moment later, Mason and Goodspeed were thrown into a cell roughly. The two immediately felt hopeless. At this moment in the capital, the president was caught in a dilemma. On one side is saving millions of San Francisco residents. On the other side are 81 innocent hostages on Alcatraz Island. And those forgotten war heroes. After weighing the pros and cons, the president finally decided to send fighter jets to bomb Alcatraz Island. This was the most difficult decision of his life. The 2 people locked in the cell were trying to save themselves. As Mason tore the bedsheet into several strips, his nimble fingers wove the strips together, and a sturdy rope was completed. Then he carefully threaded the rope through the cell door's gap. With a few twists of the hand, the rope hooked precisely onto the prison door latch. At this moment, Goodspeed was loudly complaining. But as soon as he finished speaking, the cell door in front of him slowly opened. It turned out that 30 years ago, Mason had used this very trick to successfully escape from Alcatraz Island. Who could have guessed 3 decades later, the old method would still be effective? There were only 3 hours left until the transfer. Homer was awaiting the large sum of money. Received a call stalling for time. The rebels were also continuously agitating. After some contemplation, Homer finally made up his mind and ordered the launch of the missile. The missile, trailing a long streak of fire, tore through the sky, heading swiftly towards San Francisco Bay. just as it was about to fly over the San Francisco Stadium. In the moment when disaster was imminent, Homer was torn inside, but in the end, reason prevailed. He quietly altered the missile's target coordinates on the computer. The missile immediately changed direction, abruptly veering off its original course and plunging into the sea. In fact, Homer never once considered becoming a traitor to his country. He deliberately staged the missile hijacking and hostage situation, merely to use these as bargaining chips with the main purpose was to demand rightful benefits for the subordinates who had sacrificed themselves. Commander Homer ordered his subordinates to retreat, while he stayed behind to face the consequences. The soldiers had no way out. From the moment they set foot on Alcatraz Island, they were no longer Marines in their eyes. Once the operation ended, the promised $1 million would completely vanish into thin air. Homer's control over his subordinates immediately became ineffective. The two newly recruited rebels became even more greedy. They conspired to seize command from Homer. The situation became tense. An internal conflict was about to erupt. The two sides, unable to agree, immediately drew their guns and started shooting at each other. The two who had just escaped from the cell happened to witness this scene. Mason intervened to temporarily push back the enemy and save the dying Homer. Homer's conscience finally awakened, and knowing his fate was sealed, he then told the two the location of the last missile. Upon hearing this, Goodspeed immediately went to disarm the missile, while Mason stayed behind to hold off the rebels. When Goodspeed reached the rooftop, he indeed saw the last toxic gas bomb. Goodspeed removed the toxic gas from the missile, and the black traitor from before had caught up to him. Goodspeed could only use the toxin in his hand as a shield, beginning a tense battle of wits with the black man. Goodspeed, the black man in front of the missile, seizing the opportunity to press the launch button. The massive thrust flung the black man, causing him to lose control and fall down. Troubles continued to pile up as another rebel pursued him. At this moment, Goodspeed carried the toxin and ran to the top of the lighthouse. A crystal ball containing a highly potent toxin accidentally fell. Goodspeed lunged forward. Fortunately, he managed to catch the crystal ball just as it was about to fall off the edge of the tower. However, the rebel on the roof also spotted him and immediately opened fire fiercely. Goodspeed luckily dodged. Then Goodspeed placed the toxin into the water tank on the lighthouse. At this moment, Mason finally caught up, helping Goodspeed to deal with the immediate threat. Goodspeed did not realize that the rebel on the roof had already been dealt with. He carried the chip and the crystal ball, jumped off the lighthouse, and hid in the corner of the warehouse. Unexpectedly, the leader of the rebels also chased him here. At this moment, after thinking for a moment, he threw the guidance chip out as bait. Sure enough, the leader was attracted by the chip and gradually approached. Just as the opponent was about to touch the chip, Goodspeed suddenly charged out from his hiding spot to attack the rebel leader. But after all, Goodspeed was just a chemist. After a brief confrontation, Goodspeed gradually lost the upper hand. Falling into a life-threatening situation, Goodspeed risked his life to shove the small green sphere in his hand into the rebel leader's mouth. In an instant, the rebel leader foamed at the mouth, and his skin quickly ulcerated and necrotized. However, during the struggle, Goodspeed also accidentally got exposed to the poison. He struggled to endure the discomfort, trembling as he grabbed the antidote syringe and forcefully injected it into himself. Meanwhile, fighter jets roared across the sea, loaded heading towards Alcatraz Island. Goodspeed regained some clarity and suddenly remembered an important piece of information. After completing the mission, but so he must use a green flare as a signal. Otherwise, the fighter jets dispatched by the Pentagon would not hesitate to drop bombs. Alcatraz Island would become a pile of rubble. Goodspeed hurriedly grabbed the green signal smoke grenade and then dragged his trembling body out of the warehouse. At this moment, the bombing had entered its final countdown. As soon as the soldiers on guard saw the green smoke signaling the mission's completion, they immediately called headquarters to request the cancellation of the bombing, but it was all too late. The pilot had already dropped a heavy bomb, and a massive wave of hot air immediately surged. Goodspeed had no strength to resist and was directly thrown into the sea. Fortunately, Mason had just finished fighting nearby, and without hesitation, he jumped into the sea, ultimately saving the unconscious Goodspeed. A few minutes later, the command center's radio signal was reconnected. They contacted Goodspeed, who had just escaped death, and learned that all the hostages were safe. This nerve-wracking crisis was successfully resolved. At this moment, Director Womack was most concerned about Mason's safety. Goodspeed looked at Mason beside him, knowing that if Mason returned alive, what awaited him was still imprisonment. He hesitated for a moment, and then reported to Womack that Mason was dead. Mason expressed his gratitude, then handed Goodspeed a piece of paper, which was a wedding gift for him. St. Michael's Church front row. Right leg? A month later, Goodspeed and his girlfriend held their wedding. He followed the instructions on the piece of paper to that church. On the right side, on the first row of seats in the church, Goodspeed saw a film canister. The contents inside left him utterly astonished. There were even the most top-secret documents of the United States that Mason had held before going to prison. The movie ends here. Above is the entire content of the classic film, The Dark. Do you think this movie is good? If you think it's good, comment 1. If you think it's just okay, comment 2. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you again.